On my first day on work, I gave my boss room card as a recharge card to the client. At 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, the boss, who was eclipsed in pajamas, sent the customer wearing a dress and holding flowers to the police station. And I, looking at the boss with a face like black charcoal, shivered. A slippery kneeling, woo woo, I didn't mean to. As I watched Stan Haywood talk in the conference room, I let out my 101st exclamation of the day. They are also just graduates. How come they are the boss of the company, and I am his conscientious little secretary? And this secretary is still my brother, who threatened him with his friendship with Stan Haywood for more than 10 years. In my brother's words, Stan Haywood, I'm just this little sister, and I'd rather let others find out she's stupid. Stan Haywood pondered for a moment and nodded with difficulty. So I just finished my graduation defense yesterday, and today I came to Stan Haywood's company. Back then, the gap between me and Stan Haywood wasn't that big, one sophomore and one junior. Before the third year of high school, we were all good partners, who skipped class and pretended to be sick together, and we covered each other, so to speak, as teachers of various subjects. The most headache for people. Until the third year of high school, Stan Haywood was like a different person, not to mention the rapid growth of his stature, and his studious heart was also burned, and I became the target of our family. During that time, our house was filled with a, look at what Stan Haywood is like, vibe, and even my dog was not looking at it. I wagged my tail, realizing that Stan Haywood had betrayed the order. I angrily edited a 600-word text message to accuse him. After a year of hard work, he was finally admitted to the university as expected. Later, he and Stan Haywood slowly lost contact. Knock knock. The pen tapped on the table, and I snapped back to my senses to find Stan Haywood looking at me with displeasure. I felt weak for a while, and I buried my head in pretending to take notes. Today's meeting is here first. The company's customers will come over in a while. The sales department will receive them. I will attend in the evening, and the return gift for the customer has been booked. Tiffany Lamb, you can send it to the customer in the evening. All right, adjourn, Stan Haywood commanded methodically. Okay. I peeked my head out of the papers, my eyes blinking, and I felt a sense of joy all over my body. Flutter. I don't know who laughed out loud. I looked up. I don't know if it's an illusion. I always feel Stan Haywood. There was a vague smile on his face. On the way to the hotel in the evening, Stan Haywood and I were speechless, and there was an atmosphere of awkwardness in the car. Hear Channing Lam say your university is in Haikang. Stan Haywood breaks up the fantastic atmosphere in the car. Yes, I replied subconsciously. I thought you would choose. Stan Haywood was halfway through his sentence, looking at me with a complicated look in his eyes, but I understood his overtones. How can I get into your school? Back then, I was just talking about fun, I said half-jokingly, turning my head away from Stan Haywood's complicated face. After getting out of the car, Stan Haywood returned to his unapproachable appearance, chatting with the customer with a decent face, and between pushing the cup and changing the lamp, the customer asked tentatively, Stan Haywood is young and promising, and I don't know what kind of person I like. People who like to laugh. Stan Haywood blushed with alcohol on his face and glanced at me as he smacked the vegetables. I tilted my head, my mouth full of vegetables, looked at him with a puzzled expression, and asked silently, what's wrong? Stan Haywood didn't reply, and was pulled by the customer for another round of drinking. At the end of the drinking party, the customer's face was flushed, but Stan Haywood still looked normal, and greeted people with normal speech and demeanor. Only I knew that he was pretending. All he needed was a bed, and he could sleep to death. Stan Haywood, how are you doing? In the corner where no one could see, Stan Haywood rested his head on my shoulder. Tired, Stan Haywood said aggrievedly. Then I'll help you back to your room to rest. Okay, Stan Haywood nodded. Halfway through, I ran into a colleague. Tiffany Lamb, did you give the client a return gift? I slapped my head and oh no, I forgot about it. I took the card out of Stan Haywood's pocket, told my colleague to send Stan Haywood back to his room, and hurried back. Fortunately, the customer hasn't gone yet. I'm so sorry. We at Stan Haywood have prepared a gift for you, and we hope that we will have a happy cooperation. I handed the card up. Mr. Li's face turned red for a while, and he asked tentatively, Do you Stan Haywood think the same way? After saying that, I actually saw a touch of shyness on his face. That's for sure. Otherwise, I wouldn't have delivered it, would I? God, can anyone tell me that it is obviously a shopping cart? How can Mr. Lee be so happy? Looking at Mr. Lee, who left shyly, I sighed. We may not understand the world of rich people. In the middle of the night, I was sleeping soundly when I was woken up by a sharp knock on the door. Who? I got up with a displeased look on my face, and rolled up my sleeves, intending to see who it was who wouldn't let people get a good night's sleep in the middle of the night. Stan Haywood. I was shocked. Stan Haywood's spaggy bathrobe, messy hair, and an angry expression. Tiffany Lamb. Stan Haywood gritted his teeth and called my name, and pulled me out the door. I looked at him blankly. Hey, where are you going? Guess, Stan Haywood said angrily. When I got into the car, I smelled Stan Haywood's perfume. As I got closer and closer to the police station, a bold guess came to my mind. Stan Haywood, you're not going to get caught prostituting, are you? As soon as he finished speaking, Stan Haywood looked at me in shock. Lonely men and widows in the middle of the night. Who am I prostituting? Stan Haywood said angrily. No matter how strong the obtuse was, I could sense that Stan Haywood didn't want to talk to me at all. So he just shut up. It wasn't until I got to the police station and saw the same disheveled customer that I got the story from the police. It turned out that I mistakenly gave Stan Haywood's key card to the customer as a return gift. The client already had a very good impression of Stan Haywood, and when he heard that he didn't have a girlfriend, he saw me hand over the tenant, thinking that Stan Haywood also liked him. He wore a suit in the middle of the night, held flowers, and brushed open the door of Stan Haywood's room. Watching Stan Haywood sleeping in bed, I thought about kissing Fangs. Who knew that Stan Haywood was also very vigilant when he slept, punched him to the ground, and immediately called the police. Listening to the customer's description, I subconsciously looked at Stan Haywood's face. Damn it, I really want to ask the customer if Stan Haywood's face is good. In the end, because this was an oolong, the two sides shook hands with each other and made peace, and then left the police station. Looking at the customer's angry back, I pouted. Stan Haywood, is he going to sign a contract with us? How many years will I have to stay with the company to pay off this debt? Stan Haywood smiled. 10,000 years. The client who had already been negotiated suddenly became uncooperative, and the reason given by Stan Haywood was inappropriate. I stood in the pantry, pondering whether I should apologize to Stan Haywood. When he pushed the door in, Stan Haywood was reviewing papers. When I looked up and saw that it was me, I lowered it again. What kind of solution has Miss Xu come up with to fix me? In the tone of yin and yang, I actually heard a hint of pampering. What a word! What a word! I don't need to do that. I didn't have a reason to feel weak, and subconsciously quibbled. Yes, you don't have to do this as a person. You just go to my mother to complain, or secretly change my PPT to cartoons, and then sneak into my classroom and replace my paper with yours. Stan Haywood counted on his fingers, and I blushed and hurriedly interrupted him. Speaking of which, I haven't been back to high school since I graduated, so if I had time, I would really like to go back. You want to go back? Then we'll go now. Stan Haywood put down the pen in his hand and picked up the coat in his chair. Hey, that's not good. Wouldn't it be nice to go out during work hours? Stan Haywood put on his coat and said solemnly. Tiffany Lamb, remember, we're not going out to play. We're calling it market research. Looking at Stan Haywood's serious appearance, I chuckled and pretended. Okay, Stan Haywood. Back in high school, Stan Haywood and I went to see my homeroom teacher first. Ouch, I didn't expect you, the kid who gave me such a headache, to come back to see me. The teacher joked with a smile. You don't know, she suddenly changed her sex in her junior year of high school, and she studied hard, and we all called her Stan Haywood number 2. The teacher pointed to me, and Stan Haywood. Stan Haywood looked at me meaningfully. Looks like someone has got my true pass. I reached for Stan Haywood's mouth. The bell rang. The teacher had class to leave first, and Stan Haywood and I were walking on the road to campus. Why don't you go and see your homeroom teacher? My homeroom teacher retired the year before last, and I rushed back to attend his retirement ceremony. Stan Haywood said as he walked. How were you in college? I was the first to ask. and Stan Haywood and I were silent about college. When I really said it, I found that I wasn't so sad. It's okay. It's busy every day in the lab, or in a symposium, hearing me talk about college. Stan Haywood was stunned for a moment, and thought for a moment, I didn't see that you were busy, and you had time to fall in love with others. I muttered quietly, when did I fall in love with someone else? Wait, you've been to my university. Stan Haywood keenly grasped the hole in my words, grabbed my hand, and forced me to look him in the eye. I panicked in my heart, and the phone rang. It was my brother, and I hurriedly picked it up. Hey, brother, I hurried out. What's wrong with you? Why do you feel like a thief? I silently rolled my eyes in my heart. Sure enough, I couldn't be too kind to him. Tell me something. That's right, I said it was definitely not my sister just now. I booked a restaurant in the evening, and you called Stan Haywood, and I have to thank them for being willing to take you in. I was just about to say no. Stan Haywood took my phone. Hey, Channing Lam, it's me. I've got time in the evening. Okay, I'll go with her then. The phone hung up, and Stan Haywood put the phone back in my bag with a natural face. Well, big brother, this is too warm. Just now, seeing that Stan Haywood was going to continue the conversation just now, I hurriedly dragged him forward. Hurry up, there's a snack street ahead. I'm starving. Stan Haywood paused, sighed, and resigned himself to the food stall with me. When we saw Channing Lam in the evening, Stan Haywood and I sat down with large bags of food in our hands, and we sat down under Channing Lam's disgusted gaze. No, you two just came back from studying abroad, so you can eat everything. That's too low, isn't it? Channing Lam said disgustedly. Channing Lam, you didn't eat when you were in school, did you? I crossed my waist and slumped back. Hey, you're too embarrassed to talk about me. I don't know who went to Beijing to meet netizens after the college entrance examination, and when he came back, he cried a lot, saying that he would never go back to high school. Have you been to Beijing after the college entrance examination? Why don't you come to me? Stan Haywood was surprised to hear that I had been to Beijing. She's too embarrassed to tell anyone that even my parents don't know about it. I once came home and saw her hiding in the quilt crying secretly, and I told me when I was pressed, said that the man had a girlfriend, and secretly hid it until she went over. Don't let me know who the man is, or I'll break his legs, Channing Lam shouted. I glanced at Stan Haywood, and saw that he was looking at me as well. I subconsciously withdrew my gaze. I was so frightened by the meal that Stan Haywood looked at me from time to time, so shocked that I couldn't even react to Channing Lam, and I was ridiculed for nothing. By the time the meal was over, Channing Lam was still laughing at me for having been working hard lately. I was holding my breath, and was about to have a seizure, when Stan Haywood grabbed me. It's not too early. I'll send her back first. With that, he stuffed me into the car, leaving Channing Lam unto his senses. Look at Channing Lam standing in place, and then look at Stan Haywood driving. Big brother, is it possible? That's my own brother. Should I go home with him? But I didn't dare ask, because I could now clearly sense that Stan Haywood was upset. Hey, that's not the direction of my house. Realizing that the direction was wrong, I hurriedly spoke up. Stan Haywood pulled the car to the side of the road. I have a few questions for you. If you don't want to answer, you can just say yes or no. Have you been to Beijing since your junior year of high school? Stan Haywood stared at me tightly, and I tried to retort, but found I couldn't say it. Yes, I compromised. Did you find me at my university? I nodded. The man you talked about just now was me. The last question. Stan Haywood used a 100% affirmation. I bowed my head and remained silent. Tiffany Lam. Stan Haywood called me angrily. I reluctantly spoke. Yes, I went to see you during the summer vacation. I wanted to surprise you, but who knew that you brought your girlfriend to surprise me? As I spoke, my voice began to cry. After the college entrance examination that year, I bought a ticket to Beijing non-stop, and no one told me, saying that I wanted to travel, but I actually wanted to surprise Stan Haywood. As a result, when I finally entered his school and found him after many inquiries, I found him and a girl hugging each other in front of the school building. I put the gift I had given him back in my bag, walked around the attractions in Beijing by myself, and then went home. When I got home, my mom asked me how I was doing, and I said perfunctorily that it was fine. Actually, I didn't look around at all, and my mind was full of images of Stan Haywood and the girl hugging each other. Later, I couldn't help it, and I was accidentally found by Channing Lamb while hiding under the covers and crying. Channing Lamb kept asking who the man was and was going to fix him. I had no choice but to make up such a story. During that time, Channing Lamb's company was very busy, but he managed to find time to go home and chat with me every day. It wasn't until he noticed that I was in a better mood that the two of us went back to bickering every day. Hey, when did I fall in love? Stan Haywood looked at me with a puzzled expression. Don't pretend. I've seen it. You're hugging her. I wiped my tears and sobbed quietly. Stan Haywood thought for a moment, pulling out his phone and rummaging through for something. You don't have to admit it. I may have liked you back then, but we have grown up. We should all look forward. And now you. Before I could finish my sentence, Stan Haywood held the phone up in front of me. You're talking about him. I looked at the photo on my phone in shock. It was a graduation photo of Stan Haywood, and next to him, there was a slightly skinny boy with long hair, facing the camera. This brother, is he a man? I opened my mouth wide and was shocked. No, how is he a man? So that's what you see. Stan Haywood's eyes narrowed, and he looked at me dangerously. A person secretly went to Beijing, lied to his family, misunderstood that I was in love and didn't come to ask me. That's why you didn't apply to a university in Beijing. You gave up our agreement for the sake of this misunderstanding. Stan Haywood's face darkened with every word he spoke. I swallowed. And what did you say to me? I'm a spirit, and my usually not very bright brain suddenly opened. What I'm talking about is that my love for you is deep-rooted and unforgettable. I looked at Stan Haywood sincerely. Joke. If I don't say something nice. This night is dark and windy. Even if he buries me, Channing Lamb won't find out. Tiffany Lamb, be my girlfriend. As he spoke, Stan Haywood's kiss fell. When I got home in a daze, the corners of my mouth were still red. You're finally back. Why have you been there for so long? My face flushed, and the image of me kissing Stan Haywood flashed to me. You have to take care of it. I pushed Channing Lamb away and went upstairs. Watching my hurried footsteps, Channing Lamb narrowed his eyes and sent a message to Stan Haywood. Brother, something is wrong with my sister. You can take a good look at her for me. Don't let her fall in love. If only let me know who she's with. Stan Haywood sent a question mark. Abolish him. On a big night, Stan Haywood felt a chill rush over his head. Stan Haywood forwarded the chat to me, and I was happy to roll on the bed. So what now? I don't think my brother-in-law has a good image. On the phone, Stan Haywood said helplessly. Otherwise, let's fall in love first, and then tell him when the time is right. I bit my lip, very confused. Okay, listen to my girlfriend, Stan Haywood said dotingly. At breakfast, Channing Lamb offered to take me to work, but I refused. Channing Lamb had a look I knew I had, and I had to see who was sending me to work. I wiped my mouth slowly and methodically. Stan Haywood sent me. What's wrong, brother? You want to send me too? Channing Lamb was frightened by this brother, and hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. Looking back, Channing Lamb did have a psychological shadow on my brother. The last time I called him brother, I came back from Beijing. I was hurt by love. Channing Lamb stayed at home with me, and I lost 12 pounds in a month. The last time I called him brother, it was because he didn't do well in the high school exam. So he forged his parents' signatures, and my dad found out. And since then my dad has made him saddled me with 3 years of high school tuition and living expenses, which is a beautiful name and responsibility. Channing Lamb also thought of the few brothers, and before he even finished breakfast, he hurriedly put me in Stan Haywood's car. Stan Haywood, go to work and fix her. Stan Haywood smiled and nodded. I was helpless for a while. Brother, your house has been stolen, and you are still holding this pleasure. So in the days that followed, Channing Lamb called me every now and then to ask what I had been up to. Every time I brought up Stan Haywood, I either worked overtime with Stan Haywood, had dinner with Stan Haywood, or went on a business trip with Stan Haywood. Every time he heard the word Stan Haywood, Channing Lamb hung up the phone in the next second. I do spend my days with Stan Haywood, either at work or at dinner. Strange to say, Stan Haywood, who was serious in front of him, was like a different person after falling in love. waiting for me to deliver documents in the office every day. On this day, Channing Lam called again. Hey, my voice was hoarse, and my eyes were looking around. Where are you? What time is it? And I'm not back. Oh, I'm at Stan Haywood's house, and I haven't finished dealing with some things yet. I touched my nose weakly. Stan Haywood, let him send you back after dealing with it. It's not safe to take a taxi at night. After that, before I could react, Channing Lam had already hung up. Brother, is it possible? Stan Haywood is not safe either. Looking at Channing Lam, who was not at all guarded, I was speechless for a while. Stan Haywood wrapped his towel around him, shirtless, and wrapped me in his arms, his voice just as hoarse. When are you moving to me? Heh. After speaking, he rubbed his head against me. My brother won't agree. Shocked by this picture of a beautiful man coming out of the bath, I stammered. He and I have our own way. You first say if you want to. Stan Haywood leaned over to kiss me, and I closed my eyes and nodded softly. Pop. The room fell into darkness. I opened my eyes, and subconsciously hugged Stan Haywood. Stan Haywood smiled softly. Tiffany Lam, don't worry. I blushed and hurriedly pushed Stan Haywood away, who was in a hurry. In the end, it is unknown how Stan Haywood managed to convince Channing Lam. Within 2 days, Channing Lam looked at me, with a look on his face. It's your fate. With my brother's blessing, Stan Haywood saw that you worked too hard to go back and forth to work every day, so I found you a house close to the company, or he was upstairs, and it happened that it was convenient for you to find him if you had anything. Looking at the complacent Channing Lam, I thought for the first time that human skin could be as thick as this. Brother, he is looking at your face. He is looking at your sister. Oh my God, brother, you're so popular. If it weren't for you, Stan Haywood wouldn't have been so good to me. I flattered Channing Lam and quickly packed my bags and stuffed it into Stan Haywood's car in the afternoon. Thanks. Stan Haywood patted Channing Lam on the shoulder. We should thank you. Watching Stan Haywood and I leave, Channing Lam stood still and scratched his head, wondering how something was wrong. How the hell did you convince my brother? When I was packing up at Stan Haywood's house, I still couldn't believe it would be so easy to live in. Ahem, maybe your brother trusts me more. Stan Haywood subconsciously touched his nose. Heh. Seeing me look dangerous, Stan Haywood had to be honest. It turned out that he told Channing Lam that if I lived at home, the boy who was warm with me would definitely not show up, and that only by letting people down their guard could they be caught in one fell swoop. Channing Lam heard it and thought it made sense, and Stan Haywood duly revealed that there was an apartment next to his house that was vacant, so I was sent to the door by Channing Lam. Stan Haywood grabbed my hand and kissed it, and I hooked his tie with my backhand. Well, not only did you let your guard down, but you also lured the wolf into the house. Now, the wolf is going to collect interest. The next day, when I woke up, Stan Haywood was still asleep, and I was playing with my hands as I looked at Stan Haywood's long eyelashes. Why do you do something bad early in the morning? I'm not shy about being caught. I still think it's better when you're asleep. At least it's not murderous, I quipped. Where's the murder? Stan Haywood grabbed my bad hand and said helplessly, just last time we had a meeting, you still murdered me, baby. You stared at the sales team leader opposite, and everyone turned red. And after the meeting, you came to ask me if you were interested in him. You say, should you be murderous? I was stunned. I didn't expect there to be such an oolong. I was so ashamed that I couldn't stay in bed, so I could only go down to wash. Ding dong. Channing Lam sent a message, saying that my parents were going back to my hometown tomorrow to worship my ancestors, and asked me to pack up my things and leave together in the afternoon. I shook my phone, called Stan Haywood, and looked at Channing Lam's message. Stan Haywood smiled helplessly and resigned himself to packing my bags. On the way to the airport, Stan Haywood looked reluctant. Sleep at night and cover the quilt. Don't forget to think of me. Don't be greedy. Remember to miss me. Seeing that Stan Haywood was getting more and more verbose, I held his face and kissed it, and Stan Haywood closed his mouth. I looked at it carefully, blushing, and in a good mood. When I arrived at the airport, Channing Lam had already arrived, and looking at my spring breeze, I couldn't help but wonder, no, what's wrong with you? So happy. I shook my head, and looked like you didn't understand. Brother, The thought of taking the same plane as you makes me feel excited. Frightened, Channing Lam immediately asked if there were any other flights, and resolutely refused to come with me. By the time we landed, it was already 12 o'clock in the evening. When I opened my phone, it was a message from Stan Haywood. Look at your flight landed. Have you arrived? I felt a burst of sweetness in my heart. Just arrived. You should rest early. I have to go to work tomorrow. Weshit prompted that the other party was typing, but no message was sent. After a while, Stan Haywood sent a message. Remember to miss me. Mom and Dad arrived the next morning. There was so much to pay homage to, and it wasn't until I was in bed at night that I had time to message Stan Haywood. I'm so tired. I've been busy until now. Are you home? Mom and Dad said they wanted to stay here for 2 more days, and Channing Lam and I plan to stay here for a few days. Stan Haywood sent a photo of his office. There are still some documents that have not been processed. Is my girlfriend checking the post? I blushed, and I could feel Stan Haywood's teasing through the screen. HMPH. Ignore you. It was a really tiring day, and seeing that Stan Haywood hadn't heard back, I knew he might be busy right now, so I went to bed early. It was dawn, and my parents and Channing Lam went to the uncle's house next door, and when they saw that I was sleeping soundly, they didn't wake me up. Jingle bells. I was disturbed by the ringing of my mobile phone, and I looked displeased. Hey, who? On the other side. I may not have expected that I was still sleeping at this point. It's me. Sorry to disturb your sleep, Stan Haywood said apologetically. I came to my senses. I'm a little out of bed. What's wrong? It's nothing. I just want to ask if you want me. Of course. I don't have to ask, I whispered. In that case, then open the door. I'm a little tired from standing in front of your house, Stan Haywood said aggrievedly. I ran out of the house quickly, and Stan Haywood, who was teasing the house kitten next door, saw me come out and opened his arms to me. Why are you here? Have you eaten? Stan Haywood shook his head. That's when I realized that he was busy in the company until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then he booked a plane ticket to come to me without eating. I volunteered to prepare breakfast for him. The next strip, okay, is not cooked. Fried bread, okay, paste. Looking at the breakfast table that he couldn't bear to look at, Stan Haywood tugged at the corners of his mouth, and finally chose to eat the mushy slice of bread. After eating, Stan Haywood proposed to go out for a walk. I've been here for a few days, and I've only heard that the scenery of the back mountain is good, and I haven't seen it yet, so I proposed to go to the back mountain to have a look. When I passed by the entrance of the village, I met a grandfather of my family. Where's Tiffany Lam? Who's this? Why did you dye your hair yellow? Stan Haywood has naturally a bit of yellow hair, and this is the first time he's been said to have yellow hair. Looking at Stan Haywood, who was speechless, I said with a smile, let's go to the back mountain and have a look. Let's go first, Grandpa. With that, he pulled Stan Haywood and walked back to the mountain. Stan Haywood and I walked hand in hand along the mountain path, and asked the question in my mind, your company is so busy. Why do you have time to come? I miss you. Stan Haywood touched my head. Really? Then I'll go back soon. Why are you in such a hurry to finish your work? What if you're tired? While I was happy to learn that Stan Haywood had come to me, I couldn't help but worry about his body. Don't worry. Your boyfriend's health is very good. Don't believe it. Wait for us to go back and you will test it. I threw myself into Stan Haywood's arms, and laughed at him for being indecent. The clothes went through his pockets, and I felt something boxy. Stan Haywood stiffened, and I realized that things were not easy. What is this? What is it? Take it out, and I'll see it. I reached out and touched it, but Stan Haywood grabbed both hands. Looking at Stan Haywood's serious face, I had a guess in my mind. It can't be. That's what I thought. Right. The next second, Stan Haywood got down on one knee and pulled out the ring. I bought this ring as early as the day you agreed to be my girlfriend, but I was afraid that you would think I was in too much of a hurry, so I never took it out. Later, when you moved to me, I wanted to take it out again, but unfortunately you came to worship your ancestors, and this time, I didn't want to wait any longer. It's a beautiful place. Tiffany Lam, will you marry me? I covered my mouth. I didn't expect Stan Haywood to propose here. Maybe you don't know. I liked you when I was in high school, and you were so arrogant that you completely treated me as a brother. After realizing that I liked you, I started to study hard. I told myself, Stan Haywood, you have to be able to give Tiffany Lam a great future. Later, we agreed together to be admitted to a university in Beijing, and I was very happy and felt that our future was clearer. Later, when you volunteered to fill in the college entrance examination, Channing Lam told me that you gave up on the university in Beijing, and I was very sad and thought you had given up on me. I don't dare to go to you, for fear that you will say something that I can't accept. But later, Channing Lam said that, when you haven't found a job yet, I want you to stay with me, so I propose that you come to our company. When I saw you again after 4 years, I told myself, Stan Haywood, you're completely planted. Stan Haywood reminisced to himself, and I listened to it with tears streaming down my face. It turned out that it was not my wishful thinking from the beginning. My lover and I like each other. So Tiffany Lam, will you marry me? I cried and nodded. The ring slipped into my ring finger, and Stan Haywood and I smiled at each other and hugged each other. Come on, let me catch it. Shameless yellow hair, I still want to beat my sister's idea. See if Lao Tzu doesn't beat you to death. Channing Lam jumped out of nowhere, still holding a pole in his hand. My mom and dad ran after me panting, one with a hoe and the other with a stick, looking like they were going to fight. Mom and Dad, Channing Lam, what are you doing here? Don't hide it, we all know it. Grandpa Muraku said, you let a yellow hair come to the mountain. I can't kill him today, Channing Lam said, picking up his pole and slamming it at Stan Haywood. Ahem, Channing Lam. Stan Haywood spoke awkwardly, and Channing Lam was stunned as he looked at Stan Haywood with a look of hell. Who understands that at 40 o'clock at noon, the whole family goes up the mountain to exercise? No, it was because the grandfather at the entrance of the village told me that my sister and a yellow-haired man had gone up the mountain with a smile. My buddy has become my brother-in-law. Should I sympathize with my buddy or my sister? So, you've been together for a long time, and you just agreed to his proposal. Hearing this, Channing Lam's voice became louder and louder. I nodded weakly. Stan Haywood sat on the couch playing chess with his father, and his mother walked past us with the fruit and walked straight to Stan Haywood. Stan Haywood, fresh fruit, taste it. Oh, don't disturb him yet, let him finish this game with me. I had just found out about Stan Haywood's proposal to me, and everyone was quicker to accept it than Channing Lam. So the person you fell in love with some time ago was Stan Haywood, and you're still living together? Looking at Channing Lam's fiery eyes, I subconsciously blocked his gaze at Stan Haywood. Brother, you don't know him. It's okay, brother will finish him in a while. Channing Lam walked past me, and walked straight to Stan Haywood. Brother, what's the matter? Stan Haywood smiled sincerely, and called his brother very naturally, and even called Channing Lam blind. Hey, call me, it's okay, Channing Lam walked over with an angry look on his face, and walked back with a blank look on his face. What did he call me just now? Stan Haywood. Stan Haywood calls me brother. I tried Channing Lam's head with my hand and then myself. It's not hot. Channing Lam 0s. After dinner in the evening, Stan Haywood and Channing Lam went out for a walk. I was playing chess with my father, and when I heard it, I wanted to go out, but my mother stopped me. Let them go. Sooner or later, there will be such a day, and that's his brother-in-law. What can he really do? Realizing that I was concerned about the mess, I sat down again, and continued to play chess. When they returned, Channing Lam had a big smile on her face. I secretly pulled Stan Haywood aside. What did you say to Channing Lam? He's been smiling ever since he came back. You see, as I spoke, I pointed at Channing Lam, and sure enough, he smiled at me again, giving me goosebumps. It's nothing. Let's go and see what my uncle and aunt are doing. Stan Haywood snorted. 3 months later, Stan Haywood and I had our wedding. For this wedding, I felt that the time was too fast and I might not have prepared enough. Baby, do you know how long I've been waiting for this day? You're still thinking it's too fast. Stan Haywood stared at me wryly. The next day, as Stan Haywood had wished, I didn't get out of bed. Looking at Stan Haywood with a refreshed face, I couldn't help but complain. If I had known this, I shouldn't have said nice things for you when my brother asked me to move back home. Hey. Seeing that Stan Haywood's eyes were becoming more and more dangerous, I silently covered my head with the quilt. The wedding was a big one. and Stan Haywood said he wanted the best for me. Stan Haywood's parents were also very supportive, saying that I grew up watching them, and would never wrong me in the future. If Stan Haywood dared to do anything to be sorry for me, then I would have only one daughter in the Haywood family. I was very moved to hear this, and if there is any shortcoming, it may be that my father has a little regret. On the wedding day, when I was exchanging rings with Stan Haywood, my dad looked at him speechlessly, wondering if he didn't cry as a bride father, and that Channing Lamb, the bride's brother, was crying so exaggeratedly. It can't be described as an exaggeration. Channing Lamb can be said to be out of the limelight, from the time I cried, when I entered the room to the time I toasted, so that when I mentioned it later, everyone praised me for my good relationship with Channing Lamb. At the end of the wedding, Channing Lamb called Stan Haywood aside and muttered something. "What do you say? So mysterious." I walked over with my skirt in my hand, and they immediately stopped talking. "It's nothing. My brother said that I have been working too hard lately. Let's have a good honeymoon, and he said that he will take care of the company's affairs first." Stan Haywood took my hand, and whispered if I was tired. I shook my head and looked at Channing Lamb suspiciously. "Really?" Channing Lamb nodded sadly, gave Stan Haywood a meaningful look before leaving, and said another word of refueling to me. "No. What's his smoking? Is it that my marriage has hit him too hard? Should I find a doctor to show him?" The more I thought about it, the more I thought it was possible, and I was going to contact Channing Lamb to see a doctor. "No. You can help him see it?" Stan Haywood whispered in my ear. "My brother said, let us both work hard, and give birth to a little nephew to play with him as soon as possible." I thought that since the last time I talked to Stan Haywood, Channing Lamb didn't care about us hiding from him about falling in love, and even said that I wanted to talk to Stan Haywood. There was no objection when cohabiting. I gritted my teeth. "Okay, you two, you're in a mess." Stan Haywood didn't refute and carried me on his shoulders. "Let's go. Let's go into the cave room." Channing Lamb at this time, who knows, family. My brother-in-law said that he wanted to have a child for me to play with. Hey, fragrant and fluffy child, continue to lie in the office and work hard. It's just that Channing Lamb's wish was disappointed, and after 2 years of marriage, the little nephew still didn't appear. Channing Lamb gradually realized that he would no longer work overtime for Stan Haywood. One day, Stan Haywood worked late again. I yawned and sat on the bed waiting for him to wash up, and said casually, "Why don't we have one and accompany Channing Lamb, the lonely man?" Stan Haywood's eyes lit up when he heard this. "Although I don't have much interest in having children, I am very interested in the process of having children." As he spoke, the sound of cold and undress came from the bedroom. It's just that when the first daughter was born, Stan Haywood regretted it. Looking at Channing Lamb, who comes to see her children every day, I am afraid that my daughter is not as smart as Channing Lamb. However, my daughter likes Channing Lamb the most. Looking at Channing Lamb coaxing children in the distance, Stan Haywood and I looked at each other and smiled. Yes, it has to be an uncle. The end.